So before we begin today, I'd like to apologize because I've been gone for about 3 or 4 days, and that's because I had some birthday parties in the mix. That's kiddies' birthday parties for clients. Even though I'm a wedding photographer, I still do take other stuff, NGO work, birthdays, other kinds of events. I don't do funerals. We tried pitching for one before, but for my brother and I, at the time, my brother was my partner. He was handling the videos while I did the photography, and then we're based in Lagos. So we had to pitch for a wedding then, and it turned out to be a really awkward experience. And so that's sorry, not wedding, funeral. And so that's something we have stayed away from. So even though I'm a wedding photographer, and primarily people who listen to this, I assume, wedding event people. I hope you're still open to other sources of income because from time to time they come in handy, like the birthday parties that I just did recently. Yeah, so like I mentioned, the kids are also at home. So if you hear any noise in the background, those are the boys playing in the living room while I'm trying to find a quiet place to make this recording because that time has come and the midterms are upon us. But have no fear, they're going to be back in school soon, in a couple of days, maybe another 4 or 5 days, and we should be able to get back to our regular schedule for recording these podcasts. So at the last episode, I think we had just headed into traditional sales etiquette. What old school sales trainers and what old school sales philosophy has to say about being professional, and we looked at two criteria. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think they had to do with listening. Yes. Okay. Yes, I think so. Yeah, we dealt with two. One of them was that you should determine your client's needs before going into any solutions, and then you also have to listen attentively. So yeah, you could say they were centered around listening. So in order to be thought of as a sales professional, as a good professional, you have to be one who listens. So you don't just show up and say, okay, this is how we're going to handle your wedding, and then you start saying what your magical plans are for the wedding photography of the day or wedding planning for the day. So rather, you show up, ask a couple of questions, listen, figure out what their vision is, find out what they're heading towards, and then you can make your presentation as a photographer to say, okay, this is how I'm going to bring my wonderful skills, and this is how we're going to apply it for the day to make sure that you have this, that your magical vision for the wedding pulls through. And then the same thing as a wedding planner. You listen and you say, okay, I've heard, and so if I understand you correctly, we want to achieve A, B, C, and D. And in my own professional opinion, I think we should do 3, 4, 5, and 6 in order to bring everything to that magical wedding that you have in mind. So now we're going to look at two more criteria about what old school salespeople would say about how to be professional. So remember that these standards that I'm talking about now, standards and best practices I'm talking about, are things that basically anyone who regards himself as a sales professional, whether in 2021, which is the year of recording of this podcast, or you go back to the 1920s and 1930s, when books started being written about this subject, you'll find that these are core things that we can agree to. So the final points that I would like to look at are clarifying expectations, and then I also want to put in a word about post-event follow-up, because I've noticed in Abuja that people have the follow-up game when it comes to closing the transaction. People have difficulties with that, and it is even more lacking when you talk about the post-event follow-up. So basically, the typical vendor in Abuja pretty much collects the money, delivers the job, and then says, bye-bye, and then you start running off looking for more people to sell to. In fact, that is one perennial conversation that I'm always having with my video guy, Shegun. Shegun is of the opinion that, we've dusted, so let's be off. We need to look for new bread. We need to look for new clients. And my opinion is that, yes, in a sense, we have to look for new bread, But we also have to keep following up with these old folks, reaching out to them, staying in touch, because this is how we're going to get repeat business and we're going to get referrals. So I'm going to just put in a word about that as well before the before this recording is over. Now, on clarifying expectations, for old school salespeople, you can't be a professional if you just go through the whole process, you pay attention, but then you leave there without clarifying expectations, without feeding back, repeating what it is that you have heard, summarizing and repeating back what it is you've heard, so that we're all clear on what the expectations are. So it's not just important for me as a wedding photographer to show up and say and listen and tease out everything that they want. They want off-camera lighting, portraits done in between the church and the reception. They also want a book, 12 inches by 36. What else? We're also expecting a certain number of soft copy and blah, 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 things like that. So it's not just enough for me to pay attention at these meetings when I'm meeting with the bride and her family members or the groom. It's not just enough for me to listen and make a note of all these things, but I have to put it back to them to be sure that we are all in agreement. Because it's possible that you might start repeating everything, saying, okay, so before I leave and before you guys make the deposit, I want to be sure that we're clear on everything. So wedding date is so and so, and you want the portrait session to be done in between A, B, C, and D, E, F. It's possible that at the time that is what you heard and that is what they said, but then when you put it out, they might catch that actually they gave you the wrong bit of information there and say, oh, no, sorry, we didn't mean that the portrait should be done at this place or at this point, but rather we should do the portrait at this point as well. And it's really handy because a really handy exercise to do to clarify expectations, because at this point now you know what to scratch out and what to put in, and there are going to be no quarrels on the day. Because if you do not go through this process of clarifying expectations, what's going to happen is that you will continue based on the notes that you made during your meeting with them on the wedding day, and basically you'll be expecting one thing, and they will have a different set of expectations, and then there are going to be quarrels at the end of the day. Because you will say, okay, we're done here, we're moving here, and they say, oh no, we're going to this other place instead. But unfortunately, you might have made arrangements with your second shooters and lighting people about setting up at another location. And these things can end up being nightmares sometimes when we don't clarify expectations at the meeting. So for traditional salespeople and for those of us who are in the wedding and the event space, it's something we have to make a habit of doing. We should always clarify expectations at every stage. So we're chatting with them on Instagram, we're clarifying expectations. We meet with them in person, we clarify expectations. We have the meeting at the house, we clarify expectations. They pay the deposit, we clarify expectations. It's a day before the wedding, you clarify expectations. After the wedding, you still clarify expectations. That remember, I said it's going to be 24 days for you to receive your book and blah 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 blah. So, as a professional salesperson, you should always be clarifying expectations. So, wedding photographers, wedding planners, video people, whatever your niche is within the industry, always clarify your expectations. Now, how do we do this? We do this in different ways. Obviously, if you're having conversations in person and you're making notes, you verbally feedback. That's where you say things like, oh, okay, if I understand you correctly, what you want is ABC. Or, if I heard you correctly, the most important things are XYZ. Stuff like that. Those are concise and simple statements that when they hear it back, they'll be able to say, oh, no. The most important things to us are not XYZ, but X, Y, and J. And then you just amend your notes and then move on. So you can verbally feedback. You can also use written proposals. It's something that I do after a phone conversation when we're done. It's not really written proposal per se, but I send out WhatsApp message or text message saying, it was nice chatting with you again. So to be sure I understand correctly, our next course of action is we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's there in a simple text message. It's something that is going to be one screen, no need for too much scrolling. They can have a look at. And if there's anything that I missed out in our conversations, they're going to be able to say, Oga photographer, it's not like this, so we're not supposed to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're only supposed to do 1, 2, 3 for now. 5, 6, 7, 8 are going to be done in 3 weeks' time. So, written proposals, written summaries, however it is you want to do it. Some people like to do it through email. The reason why I prefer to do it WhatsApp or SMS is because I like to stay within the mediums that or should I say the media. I like to stay within the mediums or the media that the clients are already in and have the least amount of friction. And so clients already SMS and WhatsApp quite freely. These are more personal avenues than email. So getting them to reply to a WhatsApp message, I think, should be a lot easier than getting them to read an email and reply to an email. I also use my invoicing as a process of clarifying expectations. So we've agreed on 300k, 400k, 600k, whatever it is we have agreed on. I send the invoice in most cases. Except where people are already used to working with me. Like the last birthday that I did was Kelly that got me brought me into the whole setup. Was Kelly. I think that's Lily's concept, and I think Lily's concept, that's like the floral arm of the business, and then there's also the wedding planning arm of the business. So they brought me into it, and so now that brings us up to I think 2 or 3 that we've handled so far. But bottom line is, since we've worked together in the past, and she called up, I just said, "Oh, similar terms," and she said yes. And since we already ironed out the terms before, and we're doing the same terms as the last time, there was no need for the invoicing and the written proposals and all this, per se, because we already ironed it out previously, and the gigs were just a week apart, so there was really no need per se. Now, if they had been spaced out for maybe, let's say, 6 months, we did some work in January, and we're going to do some work again in October. Okay, no, October is 10 months. Anyway, whatever 6 months is that June or July? Then, of course, I'll go through the whole process again. Okay, the last time we did A, B, C, D. Are we still doing that? Are we still doing this? And then I would send the invoice again just so that everything will be clear. So the invoice is one of the means that I use to clarify expectations. So it's there in the invoice, 400k, and for this you're entitled to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're entitled to X number of portraits, and the book is going to be like this and this and this and this and that. And that I spell everything out in the invoice, but I itemize it just so that people can look at it again in one screen, so that there's no scrolling up or down or left and right. I want people to be able to have a glimpse of the terms. You just open it and everything just pops out on your screen, so that if there's any confusion, they can say, "Oh no, I thought it included this, and that," and it's something that we can address immediately before we get to the day. So yeah, written proposals, summaries through SMS, WhatsApp. For me, I use invoicing to clarify my expectations. That's the primary reason for me doing it anyway. Although some people prefer contracts, you already know what my point of view on contracts is. For those of you who are listening to this for the first time, well, let me just betray my bias. I'm not a contracting person. I believe that it's all about expectations at this level of the business. You do get to a certain level. Let's say if you're handling Dangote's daughter's wedding, for instance, and hundreds of millions of naira are being exchanged, where contracts are absolutely essential, and you have to spell out things in contracts down to the minutia. But at the level that a lot of us are right now, you're handling birthday gigs for 100k, or you're doing a wedding for 300, 400. Really, there's not much involved in it, because let's face it, it's going to be soft copy, prints, photo books, frames. There's not a whole lot that could go terribly wrong in these situations that require that level of detail and formality when it comes to setting out expectations using contracts. But anyway, those are things that I've already spoken about in previous episodes. So if you are listening for the first time, just scroll back using whatever podcasting app or podcast catcher that you're using. If you look at the headings, you'll see it there. There'll probably be something contract related. I think I did a series of maybe 4 or 5 conversations. Okay, I can't really call them conversations because this is me giving a monologue essentially. But anyway, bottom line is scroll back, keep looking for a contract in the heading of the title of the podcast, and you'll get to see what my own opinions on the matter are. So, summary, these are the avenues that you have before you that you can use to clarify expectation, including contracts if you happen to be that person, that kind of person. But for me, at the level of business that a lot of us are doing right now, I really don't think we should bother about that. Anyway, lest I digress, let's move on. Post-event follow-up. So, like I mentioned, the pre-event follow-up, people have a problem with, so people don't follow up too well with our brides and our grooms. And if you're doing other stuff like corporate work and things like that, people don't follow up with the event manager and things of that nature. So, if you can imagine that it's bad before we've collected the money, then I'm sure you guys can imagine that it's even a lot worse after people collect the money. Remember the little thing I said in the beginning about my good friend Shagun, my video guy, and our differences on this matter. Shagun is, we're done. Let's call it a day. Let's move on. New daily bread. And my own opinion is, new daily bread, but let's keep in touch with the old folk. And that's what I do. So you have to have a post-event follow-up process. And this is something that traditional salespeople, whether they sell insurance in America or whether they sell, I don't know, let's say cleaning services in the Antarctic or what. Anyway, bottom line is, traditionally speaking, right from the 1920s or 30s up until the modern day, it is expected that if you are a sales professional and a true professional at that you would have some kind of post-event follow-up. So you have sold your computer, your laptops. Let's say you supplied laptops to people at CBN. So you supply them laptops. It's expected, if you're a true professional, that you call back later on, 3 months later, 6 months, 1 year. I have no idea. I'll leave that up to you. To say, Oga MD, how far? The 100 computers that we provided to you guys, share no problem. Hope everything is working well. Oh, it turns out that there were problems with 3 of them. How come? Okay, can I send somebody to the office? Let's have a look at them. Because in the post event follow-up, if there are any problems and you find out and you're able to resolve them, you're going to be able to build an incredible amount of goodwill, and that is where testimonials and referrals come from. So after the event, like in this case, you're a CBN person, you sold computers, sorry, not CBN, you're a computer manufacturer, a computer seller. Let's say you sell computers at Barnex Plaza, and you're able to get this contract to supply CBN people. And after the delivery, hit them, call them up, 3 months later, say, I'll get MD. How far? The computers are still functioning well, Abby. Okay, we thank God. Remember your boys, so just the way that we did good business for you, we can do good business for other people, blah, 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 and all the toasting that follows. And if there are any problems, you try and resolve them there so that we can build some credibility. Now, for those of us in the event space, our own follow-up, the spirit is essentially the same, even though we may go about it in slightly different ways. Now, what I do is I propose a debrief. So after I work with the planner for the first time, I like to show up later on at the office and say, Madam, thanks for hooking me up with that gig. How did everything go? I reached out to the client, but, since I went through you, we weren't able to build a relationship, kind of. So I didn't get a sense of what it is that they liked or what it is that they didn't like. And at that stage, it's there you're going to hear stuff that were bothering the clients, but they couldn't tell you. Like maybe, like for me, I like to show up and work pretty much. I'm not very sociable on the event day because I have a job to do and I don't like being distracted. So it's there you might find out that maybe for the clients, they found your demeanor on the day off-putting. They might tell that to the planner, they might not tell that to you. And so because you've had the debrief with the planner, that you now have a couple of personal things to smooth things over with the clients. So at this debrief, you're going to be able to gauge the satisfaction of the clients, the satisfaction of the planner, or whoever the stakeholder is that brought you into the equation. And so the logic is the same. If you handle the wedding because it is Uncle Chukwuka who brought you in to the whole thing, after the wedding, you show up to go and greet Uncle Chukwuka with a bottle of wine, and you guys sit down and you shoot the breeze and you find out how everything went, and you be sure that your game was on point. Because, like I said, you do this, you're going to build a lot of credibility with Uncle Chukwuka. And the next time one of his nieces or nephews is getting married, he knows he can confidently bring you into the situation, and he can swear to his brothers and sisters that, look, this dude, this wedding photographer, this guy is legit. Don't worry. That he's the one I brought for this person's wedding, and this how everything panned out. So let's trust this guy. Yes, it's 500k, but don't worry, this guy is solid. He's good. So yeah, just do the debriefs basically. As close to the center of action as you can get, the better. So if you can do the debriefs with the bride and the groom, super. But if you can't, because you got in through a third party, then debriefs with the third party. Also, try and reach out to the clients, SMS, WhatsApp, email, whatever happens to be available at the time, because you might be in touch with. There are times that you might get pulled into these things. Like I know a vendor who happened to work on the Dangote thing, but he came in as a subcontractor to someone who was already subcontracted to. So at that level, you're too many stages removed. So it's not that you can get to the bride or the groom. So the best you can do is just do your debrief with the person who subcontracted to you. So the whole point of this process is to be sure that everybody's happy, and to find out where there are any sore spots, where there are things that went wrong, so that you can remedy them. Nigerians are polite people, so if there's stuff that you did bad, like in my own case, if the family thought I was standoffish, they are not going to tell me. The average Nigerian is too polite for that. So they might tell the planner. And the only way you're going to find out is if you do those debriefs. And you now know what the sore spot is that you need to remedy. You now know that you're supposed to reach out to the bride or members of the family and do your mail coupons, find ways to build much more personalized relationships. It also gives you intel about what you need to avoid in the future, because if you keep hearing the same thing, you finish wedding A, in the debrief you hear issues ABC, another wedding, you're going through the debrief, the same thing. By the time this happens 3 or 4 times, surely you should know that you have a serious problem that you need to work on. This is not just clients or the brides and grooms just being picky. There are clearly some issues here that need some resolving. So be sure everybody's satisfied. Find out what the sore spots are that we can cure them. And the ultimate goal is to secure testimonials and referrals. The goal is to get those glowing SMS messages that people screenshot and put up there. Although for me, I'm an advocate of asking if they're okay with leaving those in a Google referral instead, so they can just copy and paste that in the Google. Google. I think is it Google referral? No, Google review. Yeah, Google rating and a review. So I'm much more of a fan of doing that instead. And that's also where we're going to be able to get those testimonials that, okay, Madam Bride and Groom, I'm glad that everything is okay and you guys were happy. On that day, I noticed that you guys were chatting about Kiki and Kemi, that their weddings are coming up next year, 2022. So how far? Is it possible I can get a hookup? Let me just start the conversation with them. It's at that point you're going to be able to get that referral. So that's the reason why post-event follow-ups are absolutely essential. And with that, I will bring it to a close. Those are the 2 final things I wanted to talk about what old school sales professionals, what they say about how we ought to be all professional, and we wedding event people should basically do the same thing as well. So we should always clarify expectations when we're speaking to our clients at every stage, at the beginning, the middle, and the end. We do that through SMS, WhatsApp, written proposals, invoicing, documentation, contracts, whatever it is that catches your fancy. And then we also have to be engaged in the post-event follow-up debriefs with whoever brought you into the score. Although if you can get to the main actors, the bride, the groom, the bride's family, the groom's family, if you can do your debriefs there, that's sweet. But whoever it is that brought you in for your own slice of the pie, make sure you do your debriefs with them. The goal is to make sure that everybody's happy and that we're all satisfied. And then, if there are any things that need remedying, we find out from this point, we remedy them as quickly and as humanly possible. And we're doing all of this with the goal of getting testimonials from them and getting repeat business and referrals from them in the future. So with that, we'll wrap it up. I've already gone beyond the 15 minutes that I have promised you guys that I would stick to from now on. So we'll wrap it up. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer Tavishima Ayede. I will catch you guys on future episodes, and hopefully we'll try to keep it under that 15-minute mark. So have a wonderful day.